Hey everyone, it's Joe Glines here in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, and Jackie here from Copenhagen, Denmark.
And as you can see, today we have quite a few other people with us today. Each of these guys here and a couple others that hopefully will join soon have different, one, they're all pretty well known in AutoHotkey, right, in different ways. But they've generally also, either A, made money with AutoHotkey or created software or just have a really big background in software and in programming. And so I had, in which you'll hopefully, before you watch this video, you watched the one where I had a spreadsheet and Jackie and I were talking through the different channels of ways that I was looking at that we might make money with AutoHotkey. There was stuff about like making, the Udemy channel. There's stuff with YouTube. There's being a, consultant type angle. You know what, let me just share my screen. Let me get the right spreadsheet up first so I don't give away the other thing first. So we covered this one previously and what these numbers meant and everything. And I've actually made a little updating into them, but it was this column that really, it piqued my interest, as well as obviously these other ones were really interesting. But this one that I really thought was really interesting. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought about, hey, well, depending on your audience that you're targeting, depending on the type of people and the companies you're going to and the type of software you create, I think it really has a lot of potential. And that was what I thought, let me, because each of these guys has done different things in there. I wanted to, get everyone here and then discuss at least some of the different angles of it to see what they thought, what they made sense. So we're not discussing this spreadsheet, but hopefully you'd watch that podcast by the time before you watch this one. Now, that's what I was saying here. And let's see, how am I going to do that? Let's do this just so we keep focused. So I was thinking in general of, hey, as far as software goes, when you go to sell it, there's kind of some main ways you do it, right? There's like the totally free approach, and that's where obviously you don't make any money off of that, but there are other things you might do, like sell your, merchandise, which is just flying off the walls here at the Automator.
Yeah, or you could build a list.
Yeah, right. And there was another one I had just right there when you were saying that, Jackie. But yeah, anyway, and then there's like a freemium approach, and that's where with John with his quick access pop-up tool, where you build something and basically give it away, and you say, hey, if you like it, give me some money, or not give me some money. It'd be great if you can, help the development of it. It's one of the things I do too. Is like I have donate to me on my site. Right. So I give away almost all the software I do and just say, hey, if any of this helps you, please give me some money. And then there's going to be like, and I just I wanted to say like $10 up to $10 of a price point. Because each one of these price points, these 3 price points are going to have very different expectations in the minds of the customer. And so to me, each one of those things, if it's under $10 and under, I don't know how much support, that's kind of where we were going here a minute ago, was if that's going to make a difference on anything versus that 11 to, let's say, around $50, $60. And then after that, once you get past that, maybe up to $99 or higher, you're going to have very different expectations, right, of what people do to support you. And then there's a type of subscription-based type stuff regularly, which is, I know from talking to Jackie, it can be great, right? A great source of revenue. Transaction-based, Tank actually had brought that up when we were talking of a lot of RPA stuff now, and there's a lot of other examples when you think about it, but it gets based off of every time you do a given activity, and that way there's very little risk for the client. And then there's just like a general membership where you might allow people to have membership to your site or to a group, or to be able to get different pieces and packages together and different stuff. So why don't we go ahead and just start talking? Let's start at the top. As far as the totally free angle, getting donations, I think actually, and I know Tank has had a site for PayPal to accept donations too. So I think a lot of us have had, asked for kind of, hey, help for free without really pushing it. And do any of us think, other than trivial money, is it really, going to generate any money of any seriousness. Like my experience has been it's a hell no. It's very little.
I had to hide the link.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's for the AutoHotkey Forum, right? I mean, is that when you were using that one?
Yeah, but I had to hide the link. People were throwing hundreds of dollars into it.
Yeah, and I think that is spot on. It's great because I want to help AutoHotkey, but when you're talking about a given person, I think it's slightly different. But
I think, in my opinion, there are ways to make money with free software, but not directly. Like, for example, if you have a site in which you create little tools, you can go ahead and use the traffic from the site to create indirect money with advertisements and other type of revenues, like somebody was suggesting with creating lists and so on, that you might attribute to the fact that you're giving free programs out there. Because if you create enough tools that people actually like your site and they're actually kind of interested in what is in there, and you have other content like blogs and so on, the traffic that you generate from the free tools might actually be converted into money in a different way, not directly from the software itself, but actually there are other ways that you can actually extract revenue from that.
Yeah, I get 2 or 3 offers a month from advertisers really wanting to put stuff on AutoHotkey.
Yeah. So basically saying that free does not actually equate to revenue, I think it is not the correct way of seeing that particular.
No, I disagree with you right there. It is, because the software is free, and that's the point.
Right.
But you can make revenue, and that's why we're bringing it up, right? But it still gets back to how many hours, AutoHotkey gets people coming there wanting to do it because we have hundreds, if not thousands and tens of thousands of people creating stuff and putting it there, and there's a traffic source. How much time, what's the one, there's a really famous one, Scrum, no. He has a site where you can go in 1 hour software.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, I remember that guy, yeah.
Yeah, so he and I know people go there and stuff, right? But how much time does it take to create all that stuff? And then how much revenue? So it's always critical to me to go back to how much time is it going to take you to create that software to have a high enough demand for people coming to either A, you get it from the natural traffic, right? You can have ads or something, or B, you have people like Tank saying that want to pay to do, actual ads or generate the lead audience too, which is also a really good one of, you can use it for targeting, right? And so, okay, so for me, I don't think it makes sense for me, but it doesn't mean it can't be done. It's just, I think it takes a lot of time to create that stuff.
Well, I might have to disagree there. For example, in talking about that particular example with the 1 hour software, those are actually pretty
Scrommel.
Right. Those are very, very small tools. So I really think that those are very small projects that do not take that much time to create. Now, if you go ahead and create like a very robust tool with a lot of options and so on, yeah, of course, the time that you're going to spend on that particular software is not going to cut it for being free, right? But if you decide to create like little tiny applications, I don't know, maximum 500 lines of code, probably 1,000 lines of code, I think the time that you're spending on that is very small compared to, well, the only problem with that approach is that you have to have a very large catalog of tools to be able to get the money back, get the revenue into it. But if you, basically what I'm saying is that the time that you spend on those tools might be very low for you're actually kind of talking like you don't know how much time you're going to take on that. Well, depends on the types of tool that you're creating.
But what I don't know is, are these tools free or small price, or what's the business model of 1 hour software?
The tools, everything's free. Yeah.
In that particular site, everything is free. I think that the money that he's generating is through, channeling the traffic into other things, actually.
Yeah, okay. And letting users being aware that what he's doing with, because there are some ethical issue also related to that. I received offer to include my software in an installer, but the installer would include advertisement and maybe also malware, or you never know what gets inside
Yeah.
these installers. So I always refuse those offers. Yeah. I'd say the free version could be used in quite a few ways, because of course you can offer it totally free and try and keep calling it free. But if you're trying to make money off of your free stuff, then it could just as easily be one of the other ones. You could have a big library of small tools that you kept adding to, but why not make it a membership then for a very, very small fee and say, we'll keep adding tools to this if those interest you, or the freemium model where you have a small tool that you have extra functionality to that you can upgrade, or say, here's the free tool, use it for 7 days, and after that period, if you like it, please pay us the amount that you are fine with paying. That could be $1, it could be $10, but after that period, you can use it as however you see fit. Or so.
Yeah, and let me. I don't think I actually said this, but clarify something. What I wasn't ever saying you can't make any money, right? It's hey, compared to these other channels, like, are you really going to make some serious money? And that's where I'm like, I think the other ones are just for your time and effort. The other places, the other spreadsheet I had where I would weight them, that's where I'm kind of going with that, is like, I would put this one as at the bottom of the barrel, right? And I know from my own experience of at least just saying, I don't have necessarily, I do have programs, right? And I've asked people for donations, but it's just more of like, hey, this hasn't led to my riches. Now let's move on to the freemium.
Well, hold on. I'm going to throw something in there for you.
Yeah.
All right. So we're forgetting about another reason to offer anything for free. And Microsoft is a perfect example of offering something for free that ends up costing you a ton of money. And that is Visual Studio. Now, there are dozens of thousands of packages of development kits that have cost. So when you go to add, you can develop something yourself for free, or you can find some prepackaged code that does something similar and purchase those, and so Microsoft gets a cut. So they offer a free product. You can do anything you want with it. However, if you want to get the most bang for the buck, you're going to end up spending money.
Yeah, like an add-on approach is kind of where you're going with that?
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking about mentioning that, like, for example, you could create a free tool that has special options that you would have to pay for them. But I would consider that freemium, actually.
That's what I was going to say. Was, to me, it's not free. It's that you're selling other things. The difference being, if the other things you're selling, as I mentioned, like this, they're not related, right? Versus what I think you're talking about, Tank, is much more it integrates with it, and that's why, to me, it wouldn't be the same thing personally. But I still understand your point, right? To
me, the thing that Tank is saying is the same as a WordPress site. You can download the entire core and you can have a site up and running, and you would never have to pay anything other than maybe for your domain and your hosting, but nothing related to running the code on the site. But as soon as you want something fancy, you can use a lot of time on finding it free, or you can take the quick option and buy something that you can get support for.
Correct me if I'm wrong, it's still kind of like just saying you have a free version of your software, which has, things you can charge for.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, all valid points.
I think I might run off.
Yeah, well, I guess what we're really talking about is in-app purchases. So, and it's a video game model. It's a WordPress model. It's Microsoft software model. A lot of things use it.
But I would say that actually most, the biggest companies are going away from that model, especially in software. In gaming, they maybe have it, but most big companies are moving to the subscription-based model.
Yeah.
Because it is actually a little bit more stable, because actually people hate this gaming method of in-app purchases, in which you have a game that runs fine, is free, but if you really want to enjoy the game, then you have to purchase this, and that, you see? So people kind of like do not like that approach, and everybody's moving to a subscription-based kind of thing, you know?
Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm late to the call. If we look at it the other way around, rather than looking at the economics of it, this is a play about getting distribution. So this is about building up building as broader, like to pick up on what Tank was saying, get the broadest possible coverage as possible. And then a smaller percentage of that audience will obviously then pay for an upgrade, or if it's a marketplace type model, if they want to have an add-on or an upgrade, or there's a pain point at which they want to pay for it, a little bit like the freemium model. But if it's free, the threshold to use it is very low. So under that model, you'll probably have the biggest audience because there's no inertia to engage with it. But then at some point, you've got to figure out what the trigger is to get them to want to upgrade. So I'm thinking an example in the RPA world. I used to have a subscription to Softmotive, which has just been bought by Microsoft. You couldn't compile that unless you had a premium license. So I had a license, but until I even upgraded that license, I couldn't actually create a compiled executable, which was really annoying, obviously. So under this model, I think the free one, if you put an audience against all of these, the biggest audience would be the free one, obviously, and then how would you commercialize it from there?
So you could basically use the free tools as a hook for actually better that you have in your in either in your site or within the same tool. But basically, the free stuff it is used to draw people to your site, to your project, to whatever you're doing, and after you have them there, then you could actually try to convert them using different types of methods, as we were discussing earlier, either advertisement or actually selling a little bit of an upgrade or selling other, I don't know, merchandise or whatever. But basically the free approach would actually just mean like the drawing to your project, which is then going to be used for something else mainly.
Yeah, you're creating a captive audience.
Just to build on what everyone's saying here on the free thing, and I think also where Tank was going with this, another lateral thinking approach would be, if you think about you want the most possible customers, users, if you effectively created an ecosystem or an environment, a software tool or whatever, if you could let other people contribute to custom plugins, or you open source some of the software or whatever, you could potentially increase the perceived value of your tool by having other people also build out the value by building additional add-ons.
JetBrains.
Right?
JetBrains does that.
Right.
Yeah, but that in my opinion, for a starting company is not a good idea, because that comes with a lot of caveats and a lot of issues that you would have to solve, because then you're not actually, you're probably not in complete control of what is going on. So that means that you would have to moderate the software. You would have to have a way to confirm that whatever is going on is not illegal and so on. So basically, when you're starting out, I'm not sure that's the best option.
And I think that's an important point, Isaiah, is look, here's how, the big guys do it, right? And what is possible. And then there's the, what if it's us, right? Like, is that an angle we're going to start with? It's not that we still wouldn't even do it. It's just, are we going to start there? Right. And that, for me, that's why I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm starting with trying to take that. It's, I don't have the resource. Well, I don't want to take the risk and the resources to do that big of a thing to start. Right. And so maybe it's a really good point to bring up, though, but to say like, well, wait a minute, let's think about it as we're a small business, but that doesn't have these enormous resources, because I think almost everybody in the AutoHotkey community, that's kind of where they're coming from, right? Is We're either doing it with a one-man shop or maybe at a small company, and we need to be able to see a profit, in 6 months, or hopefully have a profit in 6 months, and not spend a year developing the tool before we even can see if there's a demand. All right, so the freemium angle, and that was where we were starting to talk to John, because his experience with Quick Access Pop-Up, as well as he puts it out there, and that was where, and John, I totally see where, I know you and I, we've talked a lot on the side and stuff too, and understand where you are, in your attitude and what you're looking for. And for you, it's a hobby, right? Like, and it's a passion, but it's a hobby too. And I think you had a really good point of where I was talking about, what if we actually created something and literally sold it for a price instead of just gave it away and hope to get some money. And you were mentioning how there's going to be expectations for support, right? Is a big part of it.
I have my day job, and for me, coding is more a hobby than a job. And I started this project under the name Folders Pop-Up in 2013-14, and I put it free on the web, and then I had feedback from users on my blog, and which became a forum. And with all these suggestions from users, I continued to improve that because I had good feedback, and it was my salary was this feedback, plus the notion of donorware. At the beginning, I renamed it sponsorware, so that now when a user send me $5 or more, I send him a code that will remove from the app some incentive that are not too loud. There are some places where it is suggested to support the development of this software. Because I have expenses to do that, I have to pay my SSL license to have a secure website. I have to pay my exe file certificate to encode my file to make sure that that they cannot be modified by others. And of course they could be, but it would not be signed as coming from me. And it is some $1,000 that I have to pay every year or two for that. So I need some income to compensate that. And I know that some other hobbyists will pay much more dollars. Those doing photos as a hobby will pay thousands of dollars for the material. So I have not much to pay, and I have enough income to pay for my computers, my internet bandwidth, and my certificates and these things. And also, because I'm doing it for fun, for me it's just pleasant to know that someone likes my software enough to send me $5, $10, $20, up to $50 and $50. Maybe once I received $100 from a company using it. But so and why I'm calling it sponsorware now is that when I send you a code, at the beginning, the code was something very easy to share because it was the same code for every user. So, and I discovered that some users were sharing the code to remove the incentive from my software on forums. So I thought it was not fair to do that. And what I started to do is to link the code to your name, and I display your name at the bottom of the main window. As someone who supported my software, sponsored by, and I think user perceive that as a kind of recognition that they help me, and I recognize that, and that's well perceived that I do that. And if someone would want to share this code, it would also need to share his name with other users. So I think it will diminish this or solve this issue. So, and I give nothing more to users who pay except the fact that they don't have some incentive to support the software, and they just do it because they like it. And the kind of tool it is, it's something that you use every day. You click on your middle mouse button to open your menu maybe 100 times a day. So it's always there. And when it's not there, because you are on another computer, you press the middle mouse button and there's nothing. And then you say, oh, I'm missing something. So after, it's not something that you use for fun one day or the other, and then you forget about that. It's something that you use every day. So I'm very glad about that because it is an incentive for users to support me, and I have a forum where they can send suggestions and report bugs, of course, or issues that they have, because this app is tightly related to Windows, as AutoHotkey is. So there's a lot of calls to Windows, the response from Windows can differ depending on your configuration, depending on your privilege, your admin mode, or a lot of things that can make the app react differently. So there are questions when I'm happy to provide support to these users on the forum. But why I don't want to sell it, and that's what we discussed earlier, is that I don't want to have any obligation to provide support for users that would have paid maybe $50, that would expect to get support for their $50. But to me, $50 is half an hour of work if I'm charging my clients, or even less than that. So, and it can take hours to solve an issue for a client. So I just don't want to have to deal with that. And that's why I always rejected this idea.
Well, I wanted to chime in a little while ago, but I didn't have the complete context. But I think that's not entirely true. The fact that you pay $50 or $30 for the software usually does not entitle you to a one-on-one session. Like, for example, if I paid $50 for this particular software and it didn't work as I was expecting, I am not expecting the developer to talk to me directly and fix it for me. What people actually expect, and that's because most of the programs, that's how they work, is that you have like a time frame in which you provide updates to the software. And if I actually send you, well, look, I have this issue, what I would like to see is that you put it on your bug list, and by the next iteration, you already have it. So basically, it's not like every time somebody pays me $50, I would have to stop everything I'm doing and I'm trying to fix the program for them. But the expectation is that, yeah, I told you there's a problem. I want to see it kind of like in a bug tracker or something. And I would expect to have a solution for that at some point, not like by tomorrow, but I don't know, when you develop the next iteration of your software. And that's where comes in, like, for example, if you do it as a hobby and you spend, like, say 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day on your code, that means that you might be able to fix it within the next month or two. So people are not actually like disappointed by the fact that you didn't actually talk one-on-one with you. I'm not sure if you have seen it that way.
Yeah, I understand what you say, and agree with that. It's also maybe just that I don't want to have to think about that, you know? So, and if you submit a bug, I will solve it, and it will be the next release, and I'm doing release when there are active periods. I'm sending release maybe every week or two. So it would not be really an issue, and I just don't want to have to worry about that. The other thing is that I'm using a lot of code, and it's something maybe I'm okay, you know, maybe more about that, but I'm using a lot of code took from the AutoHotkey Forum, a lot of open source, and my own code is on open source. It's on GitHub, and you can download it. So I don't know what would be the issue related to the fact that I'm using other people's code in my app and that I'm sending it.
So something to think about in terms of support. I can only state this with one example that really makes the point better than anything else. Do you all know who Square is? Credit card processor, kind of started to make a global name for itself. They have an app similar to PayPal in purpose, called Cash App. Now, Cash App generated $528 million in the first quarter this year. All of their support, and you cannot get a phone number and get a live person. It's not possible. They don't have one. Is in the form of an FAQ.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. So basically, no, and the bigger the company is, the less support they give, actually.
Yeah.
The bigger
Oh,
the company
ironic.
is, the less support they give.
Just,
And
just try
actually,
to call Facebook.
no, but basically, I do understand that there's certain level of expectations.
Well-
Like, for example, for Facebook, if I'm a big company working for using Facebook platform, and I'm paying, I don't know, thousands, millions of dollars on a regular basis, yeah, I do understand that they would need actually kind of like one-on-one support. If Coca-Cola is placing an advertisement and it's not working fine, they have to have kind of like a way to be able to talk to Facebook. But we're talking about huge numbers. In software that we're talking about in here, $50 plus, I don't know, $100. I'm not thinking that support is actually even expected. But when you talk about $1,000 software, maybe there you would have to have kind of like, okay, enterprise support for you. But if you're just paying $100, I really do not see that at all in other software, actually.
And
think this-
Microsoft charges extra for enterprise support. Otherwise, you have to do the same thing everybody else does, and that is develop your own solution or wait for a patch.
I think this comes down to just expectation management, how you sell it into the client. The other characteristics of big companies like that, though, is they have a very healthy community, which effectively helps service that customer base almost organically. So that's another characteristic of those big companies, that you can find that information somewhere else, and or like Jean has as well, a good forum. So if you can almost do self-service or self-discovery, that can help perhaps offset the overhead of customer service.
I agree with that part.
I'd say I have a subscription-based piece of software, and there's quite some users for that. And my main entry to support is a Discord channel, which I chose instead of going the email route, because my competitors were going the email route. And I thought, hey, I want to be able to give people some kind of head-to-head without sitting down and taking care of each and every one of them. And now this, what do you call it, support channel has been live for almost 2 years, and it has become a community in of itself. So when I'm not awake, other users actually support new people with issues, which is great. It works quite well. And there has been times where it was hectic because something went wrong, and I had to leave it, to not just ban everyone or whatever. But yeah, in general, it has worked okay. People, for my price point at least, don't expect here and now action from me. They want to be heard, and as soon as their issue has been heard, they leave me time to fix it.
Yeah.
And that's it works okay.
And just to chime in here, Jean, none of us are saying you should do this, right?
No.
We're just saying don't necessarily rule it out, that like if you didn't, you could go the other way if you wanted to, but we get, you take your approach of what you're happy with.
And it would be easier if I was just starting it now to plan it that way than changing it after 5-6 years, having this free tool distributed around the world, and now changing it. So, but I understand, and if my experience can be of some use for those who would like to have this kind of approach, I'm happy for that. But I fully understand that it's not that there's no way to charge and make some money without being too much. Excuse my English, sometimes I'm searching my words, especially at the end of the day after 4 more hours of Zoom meetings, unfortunately in French. So I thank you for your feedback about this approach.
and it was interesting because to me, I was going to say, which is where Isaias got to, was look at a higher price point. I was thinking the $200 to $300 range. I might expect some sort of support, right, for me. But you know, as it drops down, and that's where to me under $11, it's kind of like, I remember my professor in undergrad was talking about, if you saw a magic pen, would you buy a magic pen if they said you think the color and it writes in that color? Like, well, if the pen was $300, yeah, I don't know. If it's $1, I'd probably buy the pen, right? Because it's low risk. And when the software's $10, are you really going to worry, like, if it does exactly what it says it does, or it doesn't quite fit it? Hey, you know what? You try it and you move on if it doesn't do what you want, right? I think so.
I'd chime into that, and with my stuff being used around the world, the price point is really hard to nail, because yeah, $10 might not be the world to me, but to others it might be.
That's a good point, Jackie.
But you need a quite big number of buyers at $10 to pay for the time you develop your app. So there's also this to consider.
I don't think we can look at this purely on price. Obviously, prices, as Jean says, will dictate maybe the amount of users you need, but this all comes down ultimately to the value, not the price. So if it's a super valuable thing, I'll pay $100, and if it's completely a dispensable thing, I might pay 10.
Absolutely, Ryan.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing, right? It is about value, right? And that's much more the second most, and I have some great books talking about it too. Most businesses go into it thinking about how much did this cost me to create? Like, that's what I can sell. I'll add a little bit to it, and that's what it's quote unquote worth, right? And we really, every business should be really thinking, what is it worth to the customer, right? That's how you should come at it. And that's why, Jean, that's why I know I'm a broken record for you, right? I keep telling you, like, man, I think your tool is worth a lot of money, right? I do. And that's, but anyway, and I'm not trying to force you. I'm just saying that's where I'm coming from, right? Is the value to the customer. And it's AutoHotkey too, right? It's the whole thing, like what we do. But it is interesting, I think.
Sorry, gotcha.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I was going to say there's two things to throw out there, just as you're referencing Jean's product, which I think is fabulous. Think about Phrase Express, if you know that company.
Yeah, I know.
And hot strings in AutoHotkey. So I think their price point is $29, $39. You know, we can all do a hot string in 2 seconds, limitless, you know, and they're charging $29 and people pay that.
Now, I was going to chime in with that. So this might not translate very well into software, but my background is that I had a company for about 5 years, which was selling products for women and so on. And there's one interesting point that I learned there, and it is that price is kind of funny, because the price that you set actually creates a mindset on the customer, in which, like, for example, if I set up a price for $5, right? The customer automatically thinks this is garbage. While I set the same program or the same product at a higher price, let's say $39, and a lot of people think, well, it's worth it. And it is kind of interesting because the pricing, and I was seeing, like, this particular line where it says less than $11, I particularly wouldn't consider it, because it automatically signals to the customer by mistake that the software is not that good. That's what I would think. As a businessman, I would say, well, look, there are some things that I wouldn't do, because I have seen that in my business. I have seen when I set the price to the lowest that I could set it, the people right away questions the quality of the product. Right away, they tell me, is it going to break? Is it? And I'm like, no, they're good.
It is the #1 reason why Oracle succeeds, is because they charge for everything when you can do everything that they have to offer for free.
Well, and I was going to say is, not only we use price as a surrogate for value when we don't know anything else, right? So it's spot on what you're saying, Isaias. At the same time, it actually will affect how we view it. It's not just that we see it as like, oh, we're going to think it's crap. When we paid a lot for it, is there's the whole, what's it called when you don't want to go against what you think in your brain, like
yeah, you have like conflicting ideas. You have
yeah, you can't, I couldn't have bought something bad, so it must be good because I spent so much money for it, right? So you don't want to go against it. But in the article, the link Ryan put in the chat here, I've listened to several stuff from him, and he's a bright guy. He knows a lot of stuff about it. And the other thing though, and that's where I was talking to Isaias the other day about it, or maybe it's this morning. I don't know. It was a long day. Packaging together, giving options to purchase, right? And that's where also I think with what Tank was talking about with the module type things, right? The more you can give, don't just sell one thing, right? Find a way to upsell it, right? To have different versions of it. And when you can do that, suddenly you can make a lot more money, and not just because the ticket item you bought was a higher, cost. It's because when there's only one item, the answer is a yes, I'm going to buy it. No, I'm not. When there's three, suddenly you have more reasons, like suddenly to make the buy, right? It really works out where even your mid-level thing sells more because you had three options instead of just one.
Just to build on that, and just sorry to keep using you as a reference point, John, but you've got a great product that's proven itself. You've got a great legacy. You could do something like an entry point for free or sponsorware, a premium version so that what Joe's kind of talking about is a price anchoring. So something that's free or a sponsorware, something that may be at a price point around, let's say $20, and then something which is $300 or $500, which seems completely unattainable, but that could be a corporate or enterprise solution that also includes a day of you configuring it, for example. And the 500 actually makes the 20 sound very good value.
Right.
So there's some creative ways you could come up with pricing that could completely change the game.
Yeah.
And how you think about yours.
And I would have to create a low price version where I would remove features, because I cannot add that much features to this app. It's already too much, I think.
Maybe it's simpler. Maybe the middle one's simpler.
A much lower pain. A much lower pain to point to draw some, I guess, more than you're getting now revenue out of it, is to put something in the nature of a bypassable paywall in front of your download. So there is a thing to dismiss the paywall, but it's not highly visible, noticeable, but they're presented with this big eye-catching donate to the and that's a low pain point.
And Gumtree have a thing. There's a thing, pay what you want.
I at one point had the idea of using a social like payment where you can exactly the same, but you need to share the piece of software or something else on one or the other social network to pay for it.
That's that's brilliant, Jackie. Maybe Jean would actually consider that, just as the, hey, you know what? You know how you can pay me is to share it. Yeah, share it 5 times.
I proposed that to users in the About dialog box. Some of them did that, and many of them did both. So they send me money and say that the app is working.
You know what? Not to add to your tool, but do you have a button in there that they can click and it'll automatically generate a link that they can share? I would consider adding that somewhere in there.
You absolutely should add that tomorrow.
Hit this button and share it. It'll automatically.
Because the best advocates of your tool are people using your tool, and the best marketing platform for your tool is your tool. So by default, out of the gate, one of the menu items should be tweet or whatever about this, like tweet your love, undying devotion.
Yes, basically.
I want to have your baby.
No, in our line of business, how it's called is that if people cannot see it, it won't sell. So basically, in your case, the more people see your product, the more people are actually able to either donate or, you know, share it along. So basically, sharing the tool is your best marketing strategy. They have to share it, because the more people see it, the more chances you get of generating some revenue from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a Facebook page. I do some of it, but I don't put much effort on that.
But put it as a menu item by default in your config file. So the tweet, you know, tweet about whatever Facebook post is one of the default options, along with my favorites and all the rest of it. It's a low-hanging fruit.
Let's jump into the, because I don't know if it's really worth talking through. I think we kind of already handled the different price point stuff, at least at a high enough level to saying you might have different perceived levels of support, but let's at least for now jump to the subscription-based thing. And Jackie, do you have anything to chime in there? I know for you it was because at first you weren't doing it as a regular subscription thing, right? Every month people had to renew, so to speak.
Yeah. To me, the way I started was I made it for myself. I showed it to a buddy, and he was like, "You can sell that." I was like, no, I can't. And he was like, "Yeah, you can." Okay, but what can I sell it for? Can I sell it for $5 or what? Yeah, $100. You can sell it for $100. And I'm like, no way. And then he actually introduced a few customers to me, and they were pretty much willing to pay $100 for it. And I was like, okay, fair enough. There's a market for this, and slowly built a web page and a way to sell it, and extended that, and now it's a subscription-based thing instead. So yeah, you can say that, sure. The subscription-based model, it works great for me because it's something that people keep having a need for. So they keep the subscription going, and yeah, it just works.
And at a low enough price point, it's a set it and forget it. People forget they even have the subscriptions.
Yeah, that's something.
And Tank, it's an interesting conundrum you're opening up there, because that price point is going to, his audience, as he mentioned earlier, you know, can be they're around the world. That the price point is different for especially his audience is often younger people. So it's still, you're right, they can forget it. However, my point is, with some businesses or something, you know, $99 a month, they might forget it, right? So it's relative, of course, who your target audience is, right? And what it is to them, what the value is. And again, it gets back to which, Ryan, the value of what you're offering, right? Even if they don't forget it, it's that, hey, I gotta, if I it's too painful to stop using it, right? I think actually that came up with Jean's too, right? It's such a great tool. I don't mind paying the subscription fee. Yeah.
Well, I throw two things in here. One is a subscription model doesn't have to be monthly. One of the products I think which is at a good price point at $100 annually, which is very, very popular in its niche. Some of you may know it. It's called Screaming Frog. It's an SEO tool. It's a desktop-based SEO site scraper, basically. $100. The license is annual, so it's quite good. The other quick observation I want to make about subscription-based stuff, this might sound a little bit counterintuitive, but I think there's a real market for, this will sound odd, automating marketing automation tools for two reasons, and also actually e-commerce stuff. The marketing automation stuff, people are already understanding the value of automation is the first point. But a lot of the marketing automation tools are very, let's call it the language you guys will get, like client facing. Okay, so in the case of the marketing automation tools, they automate the CRM aspects or the email distribution, but the actual administration of the back end of these marketing automation tools,
they're still painful,
are not automatable, which is ridiculous. So dealing with data sets and you know, analyzing and doing, like, for example, I use HubSpot professionally in my work. It's absolutely useless. You can't export data. You can't run reports. You know, it's useless. It's okay as a outbound marketing automation tool, but I think there's a real market for action because they already pay monthly. There's already quite a high price point. They already see the value of automation. But as an administrator, as a company who spends over $30,000 a year on a HubSpot, it's absolutely, excuse my French, John, it's shit, it's crap for for the administrator.
The project I'm starting right now is automating a ticketing process for Salesforce.
For real.
Yeah, crazy, right? Like these tools that they've forgotten about the guys that do the grunt work in the back, right? That means that people like you, Tank, have to come in as a rock star and automate the automation stuff. It's crazy.
Wow. Ryan, but I think your point about, again, it's the knowledge level, it's that mindset / knowledge level of people. Right now, in my past, I've tried teaching people you can automate that, and I'm teaching the average corporate employee who, one, doesn't care because it's not their time they're wasting usually, and two, they have no clue how to use a computer or whatever. So it's really painful, right? And very few adopt it. But I think you're right. There are certain groups of people, and that was what I thought I had in here. It's weird. I didn't have the target market, but it was a look. I think I mentioned a couple of you guys about 3 weeks ago now. A company reached out to me. They work in a blood lab. They run a blood lab, right? That's what they do. They have doctors that are using this software, and they actually used to have. They had a medical program, local program, and it was really, really painful to use. And so somebody, I don't know who, had actually written AutoHotkey software to interact with it and make it easier to use. So their doctors were more efficient and happy. And then someone went and changed where that local medical program, they were putting it in the cloud, and AutoHotkey no longer, they'd have to redo everything. And so they were trying to find somebody to, because that new program sucked too. And that was where I'm like, part of this learning instance, one is, and it actually applies both to your point there, Ryan, is these guys already get it, right? They knew automation was important. That's why I got so excited. But the second one that was for me was the cost per hour for the people actually doing the labor was much higher. So as a business, it made a lot more sense as well, versus your admins in corporate America, they just don't make nearly as much money. So it's still important, don't get me wrong. But when you're talking about doctors doing stuff versus an admin, your priorities, I think, as a business change of wasting an hour is just, not as significant, even though the numbers might be there because you got 80 employees,
Okay,
Yeah.
now I wanted to chime in on the subscription-based approach. I think from my perspective, that's the way to go for a lot of for software in general right now, because what happens is that you create a steady stream of income, which gives you security, which gives you also the possibility of opening up your software to more people. For example, Adobe had these programs like Photoshop, After Effects, and so on. Those are programs that they were costing thousands of dollars just to have a subscription until the next update, right? And then you had to update the subscription with $500 again. Now they changed their model to the subscription-based model, in which now you just have to pay $25 a month and you have access to all their tools. Now that makes me, I used, and this is something funny to say, here in Dominican Republic is okay, in other countries it's a little bit more complicated, but I used all those software without paying a dime until they actually changed to the subscription-based model. Right there, because I couldn't afford it and I needed them for anything that I was doing, whatever. When they actually changed the subscription model and they put a price point to $25, then I said, well, then that's okay. I can use the software now. And I think that's the reason why most of the biggest companies are changing to the subscription base, is not only to be able to get a steady stream, which is the main goal of a company, to have stable income, but also broaden the user base because now people who weren't paying for it because it was so expensive, now just of a sudden they can pay for it. And as long as I use it, I'm going to be paying for that thing. So it's actually more expensive for me.
You know, in the States, our income tax used to be, our federal income tax was once a year. And they realized early on, hey, if they could break it up and charge it take it out of our paycheck first off, but do it regularly instead of at the end of the year, people won't realize how much money we're taking, right? But it's the same mindset, right?
Actually,
and it's the whole, how to eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? I think you're spot on.
In my case, for example, right away, I just figure it out. Like, hold on. If I pay $1,200 for the software and I can use it as long as I want, I paid once, $1,200. It's not the same if I'm in a subscription-based $25 a month, in which in 1 year I have paid the $1,000 plus more, and then I use it for 5, 10, 15 years. How many times I'm going to be paying for the software? I'm going to pay a lot of times. So basically, in my perception, subscription-based is actually, as a business standpoint, that's the best way to go. And I would price it between 15 to $50 for a subscription-based software. I think that's the sweet spot for a software, actually.
Monthly?
Yeah,
So there's an overhead that we're not talking about here, and that overhead is the ability to control the software usage from the subscription payments, to be able to turn them off, to be able to make them validate. And this takes security and server infrastructure and something that where you can really have it automate an automatable situation where you don't have to have a bookkeeper go in and tick a box to enable everybody's software every year,
Right.
every month, right? So there's an overhead to that model.
But I would say if we, for example, if we want to build a team for creating software that will be monetizable, right? And it's going to be subscription-based software. That overhead is going to be probably once, because I would use the same server for multiple software. So basically, I could actually offset that a little bit by using the same platform. I would build the platform once, and I would use it for different software. And I would actually kind of offset what you're saying, because it is true. There is this overhead, and there's some extra costs associated with that. But if I actually have 3 different software, which I sell by $25 each a month, after I have like 500 users on each of the software, my overhead is going to be kind of like offset.
Yeah, but eventually you're going to have to scale in additional servers and.
Yeah, depending.
Yeah, I'd say because I already have this set up, I have a web shop that automatically generates license keys from my users, and they then enter it on first use, and the license key is on the server associated with some specific ID that they have on their software. And the subscription is then handled automatically offsite. So the payments happen that way. And the only issue, so to speak, I have is with the insecurity of AutoHotkey. So if someone wanted to remove my license key check, so to speak, or in any other way obscure it, that would be a possibility. It's not, they could do that.
Yeah, and does users need to be online to be valid users? Is the key is checked online? Does it have to be permanently online?
No.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
it is.
It is an always connected situation.
Well, I'm not sure. Basically, what I would do if I would design such a software would be to have special checks. Like, for example, if I create the subscription today, your next billing is that date. I'm gonna try to connect on that day. If I cannot connect, your software is not gonna work, right there. So basically,
The-
I would do something in a way that they do not have to be connected all the time, but I would do some checks at specific certain intervals, either once a month or twice a month, just to make sure that everything is running fine. If I cannot make that check, your software is not going to work. And on the other hand, for example, for you, Jackie, I would suggest that your software has a way of checking if it was modified, either with hashing or something like that, in which your software, at the beginning of the pull up, you hash your source files or your executable, you have your hash. If that hash changes for whatever reason, your software automatically shuts down and the user cannot actually use it. That's
Yeah, but if you have the source, you can still remove this verification and recompile and use it on your own. But it is only a small portion of the users that would be able to do that and willing to take the time to do that. And maybe the 6 of us could do that, but not that many other users.
I have, of course, taken measures to make it not something you just do, but within reason, because I'm not a person to say I can make it secure 100%. I can make it securer. So I've implemented a few things that make it secure enough for my price point, and my users use it online. So the issue with checking online is non-existent. Because
I was going to mention that earlier, Jackie. It depends, of course, the nature.
They need to be online to use it.
Is your app open source?
No.
No,
it's not. And
it cannot be downloaded. You would have to uncompile and recompile to remove it. Yeah.
And there are solutions for obscuring code on any executable. So basically, there are a lot of ways that you could actually handle that situation. But in general, as somebody else mentioned, it actually depends on the percentage of users that are actually willing to spend the time on that, versus just paying the $15-20 in that case. Or if it is $50 or $100, is it easier for me to do that, or just spend a lot of time trying to decode it and actually recompile it? And it's not always like a
popular enough for someone to try and push and a cracked version or whatever. All that kind of stuff exists, but to me, and at least for my situation, I've stopped at a point of saying, okay, here's probably enough. I'll keep enough people off that track and go from there. But yeah,
I would like to ask you then directly, because Tank was actually explaining about the overhead that is created when you actually have to work with those type of software that are subscription based. How do you feel this overhead was for you? Was it like a big deal? Is it something that you had to spend a lot of time trying to figure out and create and put it online? And how much does it actually cost for you maintaining it, like maintaining it working? Does it take a lot of hours from your time to actually be on top of that, or is it something that you set it up and just kind of forget it?
Yeah, I set it up and kind of forget it. I implemented a web shop that does it automatically when they download. License key will be automatically generated, an email to the user as well as shown to them when the purchase is over. And when they enter it into the software, a validation will happen towards my server. And from there on out, it's a continuous evaluation that happens, but it's all handled by the code on my web shop. And
it's your own code, or do you have to pay a platform to do that?
I'm currently paying a platform or 4 plugins that do it. I'm paying about $300 a year to have software that's able to do it. And then I'm paying $70 for my hosting and $20 for my domain. And that's it. That was my expenses. And those are paid within 3 months of the first year, 3 days of the year. So it is really something that you can do. It truly is, and it's manageable. So to me, the highest thing that I've used the most time on isn't even the code, it's the support, because I've chosen to have it as a chat. If I had instead done it as an email, would have been a different story.
What would be your opinion, Tank, on that? So in this case, it seems to be that sometimes in certain situations, the overhead would not be that big unless you're talking about something more secure. Maybe that's where you're coming from.
Yeah, well, I mean, I tend to be a doom and gloom when it comes to security, and that's only because of the number of attacks that I see on a regular basis on our domain, and even domains that you wouldn't expect. It happens more than we think, but having a service that does it is that you're paying someone else to manage that for you is not something I was familiar with.
The other big one, which I don't think I heard Jackie mention, was the whole tax thing. And I know from talking to Jackie, managing the tax collection by country, especially in Europe, was crazy what he was telling me he would have had to do.
Yeah, I had to keep track of every country that the purchase was made from and make sure I kept track of the percentage in sales tax that specific country would need to pay on buying the software from me. So yeah, that was the thing. But luckily enough, I used PayPal, and they actually store that information about the country, and my economic software allows me to simply pull in their tax rates for the different countries. So as soon as a purchase is marked as a specific country, the software itself keeps track of how much sales tax they need to pay. So over time, I figured it out. But at the beginning, it was something to really consider. And as soon as a purchase is made outside the European Union, I do not need to keep track of sales tax because I don't need to pay it.
No, exactly. Sales outside of your country are a little bit different. Yeah.
Now, another question, which I think I know the general response to this is going to be, but should we, if we're creating, let's just say we're creating software that's not a subscription-based thing, do you think it's wise just to find platforms to sell it on, or are you better off creating your own well, not WordPress or whatever, your own website, basically someplace where you control everything and you sell it on your own site and deal with everything around that?
I would go with my own.
Both.
I think you can be unconventional here, a bit contrarian. I think you could have a financial model that incentivizes other people to do it. I think you could bundle software. I think you could have some sort of affiliate scheme. It all depends what it is.
No, but I agree with Tank. Actually, both. I would go mainly with my own way because I would like to control some things. But basically, why not sell it on both? It is, as he was mentioning, you would have you would double your chances, which is always a good thing in business. You don't just do one thing. Just do the both.
Even more importantly, to restate it, it's not a both, and I'm not trying to correct you here. It's not a both of mine and others. It's do yours and then a dozen others, right? It's as many as you can find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, this would, for my setup, change stuff significantly because my code would then not be able to automatically generate license keys on purchase or get the information needed to handle and send the new users the needed information. But that depends on however you want to build it. I wanted it automated, so I didn't have to do anything when people purchased. If they purchased at 4 o'clock in the night, fair enough, they can use it immediately. They don't need to wait for me to wake up or anything. And I've seen a lot of software being sold that way. Oh, you sell it, and then you tell us, or You purchase and then you tell us you purchased it, and then we'll send you a license key. And to me, that's not okay. And if you go different platforms, that would be another headache for you to solve somehow. Your software could probably call into your server and get something if it was somehow able to validate the software, but I am kind of lost for how you would do that currently, because
Well, what I would say is that it doesn't matter the question that you have at the end. There's somebody who has already asked that question, and really there's somebody that had a solution for that. So what I would do is just research. There has to be a way, because somebody was thinking exactly the same as you. Well, I want to have it in different platforms. How do I fix the issue with my codes? But in general, I think it really depends on what the best option for selling would be. And I think that in this, from what we have seen up to now, it is always a combination of things. You should not sell just one type of thing.
So
you should have different ways of doing it.
I'm curious. Let me throw this out there as a kind of an alternative, well, sort of an alternative. We talked about. I'm all over the subscription-based type of thing, right? I think it's a great way of recurring revenue is awesome. However, getting back to what if you increase the price significantly and it's a one-time fee, and this is where it gets tricky, is when you do it, you still have to somehow lock it down to where they can't easily share it. As Jean mentioned his earlier version, they would just find a way to share their version with everybody where everybody can run it.
Well, I think that model has already been tried and killed. That's why everybody's leaving it.
Yeah, everybody's leaving that. Even though there are things that come to mind that I would say, well, you could actually do that. For example, that their code, the code that they create, is somehow linked to the ID of their computer, because Windows have some libraries that you can use to get some unique IDs out of the computer itself.
Absolutely.
It can be a hardware ID from a specific hardware in the CPU or something, that you can get, like, your code is linked to that particular computer. You could do that. And if they try to use it in a different computer, okay. But as Tak mentioned, everybody's running away from that. And there are a lot of reasons for it.
Because they've all gotten cracked. Everybody was getting cracked.
It doesn't matter how you try it. There's always somebody who knows how to get that out.
All I know is Microsoft gave up on it. And if Microsoft gave up on it, it's a losing business model.
You're also severely limiting your lifetime value, and it's going to put pressure on you in terms of an upsell or an upgrade to release new features. Whereas if you have some sort of subscription-based service delivery, it's going to require you to authenticate, to come back to what Tank was saying, or it requires you to maintain a subscription.
And you handle the authentication on your end, not on the not on the client.
I'm still going to say I disagree with everything you guys are saying, because you're just saying we're going to go the same way everyone else has done it. And you're going to limit yourself.
We're saying the opposite, aren't we? We're saying don't do the local on-premise install.
Yeah.
And I'm saying I'm going to go forward. I would still argue create the one version, have it as have it as a one-time fee. I'm just saying have it as an option, right? It's still something. You don't have to have it the same version as everything else. I'm not saying that's all you do, but you got to remember it opens up the other restrictions of what Jackie was talking about, of now I have a lot of other things I have to take care of and manage and do and limit them coming back, right? I'm just saying consider it as an option it's an approach, right? Just because it doesn't work with some things doesn't mean it doesn't work with everything.
You could have a hybrid. So if you had a service which had data sets, for example, you could update the data sets if you had the subscription. So you might be able to have a hybrid model where you had a local installation, whereas even if they cracked it, it's not going to have all the data sets or all the plugins or something. And if you had the subscription sort of upgrade or ongoing service, then you had extra value. So you could do a hybrid model, I guess.
I think it goes hand in hand with something that was pointed out a little while ago, that it depends on the value of what you're selling. For example, if it is a tool like John's tool, which is something that people are using it day to day and they get used to it, and when it is not there, they're missing it, right? It is something that is a little bit different than software that I use once every 1 or 2 weeks. Like, for example, I need to fix some photos. Well, I have a tool that crops the pictures for me and does a little bit of correction and so on. There are different types of software. If it is a software that is not going to be used on an everyday basis, well, I could go ahead and tell you, well, yeah, a one-time fee for that, I don't know, $35 for it would be okay. But basically, what you're actually doing, the reason, one of the reasons why all the companies are moving to subscription-based software is not only because they're getting cracked. On a business, from a business point of view, you earn less. Because, for example, if I have my software and I have a potential of 1,000 customers, which is the most that I'm going to get, right? It can be more, but I have a limit on how many people will purchase it. After those 1,000 people purchase it, I'm not going to make any other money because everybody already purchased it. Now, when you have a subscription-based, what that means is that the person who purchased my software today is going to repurchase it next month, and again the next month, and so on. So my income is actually exponentially growing, because the more people I get, the more people I have, the more I'm going to earn at the end, which is totally different than one-time fee. I'm not sure if you're getting the idea on that.
What you're saying is the lifetime value of the customer over the term of their subscription is higher than the one-off fee. So this just comes down to the economic modeling of what it is. I mean,
Right.
Why are you assuming a one-time purchase is the only purchase they're going to make from you?
No, exactly.
Well,
it may not be.
But
Yeah,
for that
false
software,
assumption.
but for that software, at least.
Yeah,
for example, if I have one
But that's
software,
that's not how you define lifetime value of a customer, though.
okay.
Right, that's for that product.
No,
right?
that's for the product. The lifetime value of.
But
the
anyway,
product.
And it could be
main
for one version of the product, so you can have a major upgrade where you would set it again.
But again, my main point wasn't to say you guys are wrong, I'm not taking that approach. My point was, hey, at least consider it as an option, right? Do both. Was where I was going with it, right?
I would consider it. I would consider it depending on the type of tool. There are
Absolutely,
some tools that I would actually get the subscription, and there are some other tools.
Spot on.
That I think that they're not gonna use it that often. Then I would just go ahead with the download fee, one-time fee, an upgrade fee if you want later on. But
well, and yeah, maybe it's something that you have an annual. It's really an annual license in the sense that because every year you come out with something new, or because the like let's say you're doing stuff with Facebook and it changes a lot, right? And it breaks and you have to go buy a new version every so often, or web scraping, right, or whatever. But yeah,
I think the elephant in the room.
Isn't that too kind of a subscription where if you have to buy it annually?
It's sort of it, but it's not. It's not. I know, but that's my point though. Is it's still the difference being. With the one model, you have to keep track of the stuff and this and that. The other one, it's just simpler, right? Jackie would be able to sell it anywhere and they just come back and rebuy, right? That's the difference. That's where I was going with that.
Yeah, but he's going to have a higher rate of theft.
Well, and a higher rate of people not coming back too. But I'm still just saying it's worth at least consider. I'm always one. I don't want to shut the door on anything, right? And I agree with Isaias. It's on each thing you're doing, you consider it, as an option you might take with that route with that one particular thing, right? Not everything.
I'd say one of the ways I would view it is, how do I expect the customer to use it? Is it something they would buy for as a one-off thing they're doing with this project, or right now I'm having an issue with entering a lot of data into this thing, and they'll buy it for that task? Or is it more like a general follow along used every day, like the one Sean had with the, I forgot what it was, pop-up.
I think it depends if it's a B2B service, if exactly as you say, what the value is, what the usage level is. If it's a B2C thing, you know, there's lots of dynamics which are going to influence the price point and the cadence in terms of whether it's subscription or a one-off fee.
Yeah. And this has been, I think it's been an awesome conversation. I got one last thing I was just curious about is regarding how you actually get paid. What are your guys' thoughts of, you know, how many options, like sources of ways you should allow people to pay? What do you think?
Well, right now, the most secure kind of way to be paying is via credit cards. That's what's, because you do have some buffer there. If in the event that something happens, you do have a little bit of a buffer as a businessman, that if somebody's trying to steal you, you have some ways of fixing that. But you know that the new thing is going to be the Bitcoins and so on. We never know when that is going to happen, if it is going to happen. Some people are thinking about it. Some people are actually really onto that, right? Other things like that, like Cash Apps. I personally use Stripe and PayPal.
Well, Cash App does Bitcoin natively.
Oh, okay. That is interesting. I didn't know that one.
I think you need to, I mean, obviously there's lots of payment gateways. I think, again, it partly depends on if it's B2B or B2C and what the price point is. Because if it's a very high price point and it's potentially a European company, they may not even want to transact on an electronic gateway.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing is that I think even broader than the actual transaction and the transaction costs, you need to think about de-risking it for the purchaser, right? So you need to think about, do you offer a money back guarantee and all those sorts of things that are going to reduce the friction in the sale.
I'd say I use both PayPal and Stripe, both as a means to make my customer feel more safe, because someone other than me is handling the financial transaction. So they don't per se need to trust my domain or my site or my brand to handle the payments, because PayPal or Stripe will handle them. And that has worked great for me.
Yeah, as somebody with a very lengthy career in credit card processing, I would say that no matter what you do, that you do not host the payment process on your own equipment.
Nah,
ever.
That's not a good idea. Not at all.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Thank you.
And you have anything against PayPal, or you
No.
Stripe or the others, or no?
You know, they're both independently and differently leaders at what they do. You know, PayPal has a tendency to work through a redirect process. You take a break, you leave the site and you go over to PayPal, and then you come back. There are APIs that will let you do it natively from the site, but through some frames. Stripe.
It's just APIs.
Yeah, and so that's a little easier. They also have a frame solution as well, but anytime that you can just shoot it off to somewhere else and have it redirect back to your site when it's done, that's the way to go, because then you're not in any way taking responsibility for what happened.
Right. That's exactly it. You limit the responsibility for your site, actually.
Yeah.
I was watching a video this morning on a guy. He runs Instructor HQ, I think it's called. It's like a teachable kind of thing, and they were mentioning they learned a new thing, and I think he called it carding, but basically people, steal credit cards and then go run it through somewhere first for like a couple dollars to see if it's valid. And then they go somewhere and hammer it. And so they thought they were selling a ton of their courses. Like, wow, that's awesome. We just sold $2,000 to all these different things. And it was, it was just someone had stolen the credit cards and they were running them through theirs. And of course they still had to refund all the money at some point, and the credit card company's like, he goes, well, how do we stop this? He's like, well, you just refund the money later. And then it's like, but it's a pain.
No, so one of the things I used to do at Bank of America was to actually write automations that detected that behavior.
Hmm.
So we would monitor transactions real time and look for patterns with. So we would find out if a card had been run X number of times recently, and Bank of America's footprint is so big that even if you go to different places, you're going to see it. So we would say, okay, this card needs to be watched. And if we see all of this stuff, we would actually reach out to the issuing bank, right, for the card, and have it flagged.
Yeah. Well, what I think, going back to the main topic here, was our idea is to see how profitable is to create software with AutoHotkey specifically that might be sold, and in which ways you might be selling them, right? Is that the main idea that you're trying to push, Joe?
It's just of the different approaches, what are the pluses and minuses to every, different price point and the different methods. And I mean, there's so many different things. I don't know if I can sum it up in one thing, but.
Okay. But
yeah.
Basically I was at the beginning of the call, I was saying the best way is usually to go with a combination of things. If you have free software that ends up in a membership, that ends up with software that actually is a subscription-based software, you can maximize the return of your investment. And if you have several tools that actually are one-off tools, then you just sell them at a fixed price point. But basically, it is kind of like usually more of a certain things everything at the same time. If you want to make a business model that survives, you cannot just go ahead and pick one of them. That's not the way to go. You would have to actually mix the things and get the right mixture for your audience, you see?
Yeah. So I'm just going to throw the plug in about the transactional model. The transactional model does something kind of magical. And yes, much like subscriptions, you have to build it up over with volume. But what it does do is it actually incentivizes both the buyer and the software creator to use it more and to add more features. Okay.
Yeah.
So because the buyer is actually using it to save money. So the more they use it, the more money they save. And from a developer standpoint, the more I get people to use, the more I want. I do that by adding features.
Can you give me some examples of transaction-based software, like? Because I'm trying to grasp in which sense, because I do know, like, for example, Google and other companies give you like the use of the API is a transaction based approach, like in which they tell you, well, if you make 10,000 API calls, I'm going to charge you 50 cents or something like that. I don't know. But how would you implement like a transaction based approach to a software? Like, for example, Jones software. How would you go ahead and use that in those kind of software? Obviously,
it doesn't work for everything, but what it does work for are things where you have some kind of deliverable as a result.
Well, here's an easy example, right? I use buffer. Jackie turned me onto this a lifetime ago. And I can be on a page, and when I find something I want to share, I can come up here and I can add it to my queue, right? They could have this instead of the way they do the model. They could have it every time you add something to your queue, it costs you a quarter or a dime, right?
A penny, whatever.
Another example of this, and I've seen this in some like SaaS RPA type things, is time as well. And you see this with like Amazon, they can charge by time as well as data and other things. So time can be another metric to pick up what Tank was saying that people can use.
So that transaction rate is based on the ROI from time that you're saving.
Yeah, okay.
Typically.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I do RPA.
So that's your take on.
yeah, and I see it in action, and these these global organizations are just gobbling.
Yeah.
Look at Zapier, right?
Oh, yeah.
Every Zap, you get a couple, like 2 or something, and then it's just like, wow, it starts adding up.
Well, they've done really well because they productized at a consumer level as well, or a small business level.
Very
awesome. Well, does anyone else have any? I think it's been a really great chat.
It was. There's a lot of things that I looked at them in a different perspective, and it's very good to talk about these kind of things, because basically as a freelance, I haven't come up with any software that I wanted to do like for sale, but then I see the potential on some things, and it really gives me some ideas of some other tools that we can create and so on that could be monetized.
And what we didn't discuss, and maybe Jackie and I will tackle it in some other one and invite you guys, whoever wants to come back, but the whole marketing, because I think a lot of us have tried to create at least a little bit of software and then said, hey, I think I'll try to sell this. And like, people don't beat a path to your door, right? You gotta promote it and market it and position it. And it's work. It's in a lot of ways more work than the actual creating of the software. The vast majority of the world thinks I can build a better mousetrap and people will come clamoring after me, and it's just not the way things work, right? So it is something that we could discuss in another round of like, okay, what are some of the easy things you can do, right? That list building thing is one of the key factor though of starting to keep track of your customers, build more products around them, communicate with them, find different channels to communicate with them. Anyway,
excellent.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining. This has been wonderful.
Good food for thought.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Bye.